My name is Brielle Carter, and on the night everything changed, I was sitting at the marble kitchen island of our 12th floor condo in Midtown Atlanta. The warm light above me cast a soft glow across the room, making everything look peaceful, almost perfect. If someone had walked in at that moment, they would have said I was living the kind of life most women dream about. My husband Damien stood at the stove, humming quietly to himself while stirring a pot of oxtail stew. It was his signature dish, the one he made on birthdays, anniversaries, and those nights when he wanted to show me that love could be tasted, not just spoken. He wore the forest green apron I had given him 2 years earlier. From the back, he looked like the dependable partner every woman would be proud to claim. But peace can be a fragile thing. Sometimes it shatters without a sound. I remember looking down at the open magazine in front of me. The pages were turning, but I was not reading. Something in my gut had felt off for weeks. Small things, late nights, whispered phone calls, missing receipts, the kind of signs a woman notices even when she pretends she does not. Then it happened. Damien's phone, left face down on the counter, lit up with a soft blue glow. A WhatsApp notification appeared for a few seconds, just long enough for my world to tilt. Sender Sienna Ward intern. Message boss, I miss you. 4 simple words, I miss you. In that instant, the warm kitchen felt cold around me. My heartbeat slowed rather than sped up, and the strange thing was that I did not feel pain. It was as if the part of me that should have hurt had already died days or weeks before. What remained was clarity, and a quiet determination I had never felt before. The kitchen smelled like comfort. The slow simmering stew filled the air with a blend of spices that normally made me feel safe, loved, and at home. Damien moved around with practiced ease, chopping scallions, checking the timer on the oven, and tasting the broth with the kind of care only someone who enjoyed cooking could have. If anyone else had seen him in that moment, they would have described him as a good man, a devoted husband, someone who worked hard and still came home to make dinner for his wife, and for a long time I believed that too. But the truth is not always loud. Sometimes it hides in places we do not look closely enough at. Sometimes it waits for the right moment to reveal itself. I kept my eyes on the magazine, pretending to flip through its glossy pages while my mind replayed every small detail I had ignored over the past few weeks. The late evenings disguised as client dinners, the sudden interest in new cologne, the quick swipe of his thumb every time a notification popped up. Individually they meant nothing. Together they painted a picture I had been too afraid to finish. My gaze drifted back to the phone. The screen had gone dark again, but the message might as well have been carved into the marble countertop. It felt like the room had been cut in half. On one side was the warmth of the stew, the soft music, the man I had promised my life to. On the other side was a cold truth waiting for me to acknowledge it. As Damien hummed and stirred the pot once more, I realized something quietly devastating. The home we had built together was only warm on the surface. Underneath it, something had already begun to rot. Damien kept humming softly, completely unaware of the storm gathering just a few feet away from him. His back was turned, his focus locked on the pot of stew he was determined to perfect. It was almost ironic. The same hands seasoning dinner with such care had been careless enough to leave his phone in plain sight. I waited until he reached for a new jar of spices, then slowly leaned over and picked up the phone. The familiar lock screen appeared. I tapped in the 4 digits that marked our anniversary. It opened without hesitation, almost too easily, like a door I should have closed a long time ago. The message from Sienna sat at the top of the screen, bold and unashamed. Boss, I miss you. I did not need to open it. I did not need to scroll. I already knew everything I needed to know. Instead, I placed my thumbs on the keyboard and typed a single sentence. My mind was strangely calm, my pulse steady, as if every emotion had retreated to make room for the cold logic guiding me. Come over, my wife is not home tonight. I hit send and watched the 2 blue check marks appear. A confirmation, a commitment, a trap set with precision. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to my own phone before carefully deleting the evidence from his device. When I set the phone back down, I aligned it exactly the way it had been, the screen angled toward the light just as before. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. It was anticipation, a quiet fire sparking to life inside me. Damien had no idea that the night he thought would be ordinary was about to unravel every lie he had tried so hard to keep hidden. Damien set the table with the same easy confidence he always had. He placed a generous serving of rice on my plate and picked out the most tender piece of oxtail for me, smiling as if nothing in our world had shifted. His voice was warm when he said, "Eat while it is hot, babe. I cooked it exactly how you like it." I nodded, lifting my fork, but every bite tasted like ashes. The flavors were rich, the texture perfect, yet I felt nothing but a heavy bitterness pressing against my throat. I took a sip of water and forced myself to swallow. Across the table, Damien talked about a new project at work, a lunch with the CEO, and his hopes for a promotion later in the year. His hands moved animatedly, his eyes bright. Not once did he mention Sienna. Not once did he falter. He looked like a man completely at ease in his own home. A man who had no idea that the ground beneath him had already cracked open. I watched him the way someone watches a play they have already seen the ending of. The details did not matter anymore. The plot had already unfolded. Every laugh, every gesture, every attempt at affection felt rehearsed, like he was playing the same role he had perfected over the years. At one point he reached across the table and touched my wrist. "You feeling all right? You look a little tired." I pulled my hand away gently and murmured something about not sleeping well. The truth was simpler. I could no longer tolerate the touch of someone who had betrayed me with a girl bold enough to text "I miss you" while I sat 3 feet away. A glance at the clock told me it was almost 8. Any minute now the doorbell would ring, and when it did, everything he thought he had under control would collapse. At exactly 8 o'clock the apartment fell into a silence so sharp it felt like the air itself was listening. Damien had just finished clearing the dishes when it happened. A soft chime. The kind that usually meant a package or a neighbor stopping by. But tonight it sounded like a warning bell. Ding dong. Damien froze. His entire body stiffened, shoulders locked, breath caught halfway in his chest. He glanced at the clock, then at the door, then at me. His expression flickered between confusion and something far more telling. Fear. "Who could that be at this hour?" he muttered. I kept my face calm and unreadable. "I will get it. Stay here." My voice left no room for him to argue. I stood up, smoothing my blouse, and walked toward the front door with slow, steady steps. Each footfall echoed faintly off the hardwood floors like a countdown. When I opened the door, the hallway light spilled in, revealing a young woman standing just a few inches from me. She could not have been more than 22. Her makeup was flawless, her figure hugged by a fitted burgundy dress that had no business showing up at a married man's home after dark. In her hand she held a small white box tied neatly with a ribbon. A cupcake. A pathetic attempt at sweetness to disguise a bitter intention. The moment she saw me, her smile vanished. Her eyes widened, startled and guilty. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. The color drained from her face so quickly that even the gloss on her lips looked pale. Behind me I heard Damien's footsteps approaching. His voice called out from the living room, "Who is it, babe? Why are you taking so long?" Sienna swallowed hard. She shifted her grip on the cupcake box as if she suddenly wished it would disappear. I stepped aside just slightly, enough for her to see him standing behind me. The panic that flashed across her eyes was instant and unmistakable. "Hello, Sienna," I said evenly. "Are you here to see my husband?" Sienna froze in the doorway as if her heels had been glued to the floor. Her fingers tightened around the cupcake box until the cardboard began to bend. She tried to speak, but no sound came out, only a faint breath of panic that trembled at the edges. Damien stepped into view behind me, and his face drained of color even faster than hers. His lips parted, but he did not form any words. The two of them simply stared at each other, trapped in a silent disaster of their own making. "Please come in," I said gently. I could see the shock ripple through both of them. My tone was polite, almost warm, but underneath it was a calm that only comes from someone who has already accepted the truth. Sienna stepped inside with the stiff awkwardness of someone entering a courtroom rather than a home. I led her to the living room and motioned for her to sit on the armchair. She perched on the edge, knees together, shoulders tight, hands folded like she was afraid to touch anything. Damien hovered near the sofa, unsure where he was allowed to stand. "Let me get our guests something to drink," I said. "Water should be fine, right?" Sienna nodded too quickly. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Water is okay, thank you." In the kitchen I opened the cabinet and deliberately reached past our crystal glasses. Instead I took out a thin disposable plastic cup, the type you hand to a stranger you do not expect to stay long. I filled it with tap water and returned to the living room. I placed the plastic cup in front of Sienna on the glass table. Then I set 2 porcelain cups with gold trim for Damien and me. The contrast was impossible to miss. Sienna stared at the cup as if it confirmed what she already feared. She did not belong here. I sat down beside Damien and rested my hand lightly on his arm. His entire body stiffened, as if my touch burned him with guilt. "So Sienna," I said with a soft smile, "how is the internship going? Does Damien treat you well at work? He talks about being a very supportive mentor." Sienna's throat bobbed. She kept her eyes down. "Yes, ma'am, he is very helpful." Helpful. Interesting choice of word. Damien's jaw clenched. His fingers twisted the hem of his shirt. He looked like a man wishing the earth would open and swallow him. I took a slow sip from my porcelain cup, then continued with a tone as sweet as honey. "We have been planning a little getaway next month, just the 2 of us, a place by the lake. Somewhere quiet, romantic. You know how married life can be." Sienna's shoulders trembled. She pressed her lips together so tightly they turned white. Every word I spoke drove the truth deeper. She was not part of his future. She was not part of anything beyond this humiliating moment. She had come here expecting secrecy and affection. Instead, she found a wife who knew everything and a man too cowardly to defend her. The silence that filled the room afterward was thick and suffocating. It hung between the 3 of us like smoke from a fire no one wanted to admit had already burned too far. When the door finally closed behind Sienna, the apartment returned to a heavy stillness, the kind that follows an earthquake. I stood there for a moment, my hand still on the doorknob, feeling the vibration of her hurried footsteps fade down the hallway. Then I turned. Damien was sitting on the sofa, head bowed, palms pressed together as if praying for a miracle. The sight of him would have broken me months ago. Tonight it only solidified my resolve. I walked to the coffee table, picked up his phone, and without hesitation slammed it against the glass surface. The crack echoed through the living room, sharp and final. Damien jumped like he had been struck. "Explain yourself," I said. My voice was calm but firm enough to slice through the air. His eyes locked onto the shattered phone, then onto me. "Betrayal, it is not what you think. I swear to you. She and I are just coworkers. She showed up without telling me. I did not know she was coming." I let out a humorless laugh. "Coworkers, right? Is that why she sends you messages saying she misses you? Is that why she knew details about your stomach issues that I had never heard from you?" He stuttered for a moment, then fell silent. His face was tightening with shame, or fear, maybe both. I reached into the drawer of the console table and pulled out the stack of papers I had prepared. The printed bank statements. The Venmo transfers labeled gift and lunch. The one for $1,500 labeled happy birthday. The screenshot of their late-night conversations. The movie ticket stub for the night he claimed he was stuck at a client dinner. I tossed them onto the sofa beside him. He picked up the first page with trembling fingers. "Betrayal, please listen, I made a mistake. I was stupid. I promise it meant nothing." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Then why did you lie to me? Why did you give her what you never gave me? Not the money. The honesty?" His shoulders collapsed. He buried his face in his hands and began to cry. A grown man breaking apart in front of me. But the part of me that once would have held him was gone. "My love for you used to feel warm," I said quietly. "Tonight it feels like spoiled food, and I do not eat what has gone bad." I walked away from Damien as he sat hunched on the sofa, his cries echoing faintly across the open living room. For a moment I simply stood in the hallway, looking at the framed photos on the wall. Our wedding day, our trip to Charleston, a picture of us laughing on a balcony in Savannah. Moments that once felt permanent now looked like borrowed scenes from someone else's life. I went into the bedroom and pulled out the suitcase I had packed earlier that afternoon. I had not filled it with much. Only the essentials. Only the things that were undoubtedly mine. The rest did not matter anymore. The condo, the furniture, even the expensive mattress Damien had insisted on buying felt like props from a world I was no longer part of. When I re-entered the living room with the suitcase in hand, Damien lifted his head. His cheeks were wet, his eyes swollen, his voice cracked from pleading. "Betrayal, please. Do not go, we can fix this, I will do anything." Anything. The word hung in the air like a desperate promise he should have made months ago. But now it was too late. I placed a folded sheet of paper on the coffee table. The record of the $40,000 my parents had lent us for the renovation we could not afford back then. When you sell the condo you are paying this back, I said. Every cent. He looked at the paper, then at me. His expression collapsed even further, but I did not waver. Without another word, I walked to the door, dragging my suitcase behind me. The hallway outside felt cooler, calmer, almost like stepping into fresh air after being trapped in a room that had grown too small. I did not look back, not once. Harper Miles lived 15 minutes away in a quiet complex on the edge of the city. She was the kind of friend every woman needed at least once in her life, steady, brilliant, and calm in moments when others would fall apart. When I stepped out of the Uber with my suitcase, she was already waiting for me in the lobby, arms crossed, eyes sharp enough to see everything without me saying a word. She walked toward me and pulled me into a firm hug. For a moment I felt the weight of the night press against my chest, but I swallowed it down. Not now, not yet. Inside her apartment, the scent of lemongrass filled the space. It was familiar, grounding. Harper handed me a warm cup of tea and waited until I sat before she spoke. "Tell me everything, Betrayal." So I did. From the message that started it all to the way Sienna's face had drained of color when she saw me, to Damien's tears, to the suitcase that had felt heavier than it should have, I told it in an even tone, almost like I was retelling someone else's memories. Harper listened without interrupting. When I finally finished, she set her cup down and tapped her fingers on the table. Her eyes narrowed with the focus of someone building a strategy piece by piece. "You handled tonight better than most," she said, "but we are not done." She leaned forward. "If he wants to play games at work behind your back, then work is where we end this. We are going to gather everything, every message, every transaction, every lie. And when we are done, his career is not going to look the same." Her voice was steady, controlled, the voice of a woman who understood both justice and revenge. And for the first time that night, I felt something close to strength return to me. Sunday passed in a blur of quiet focus. Harper and I sat at her dining table surrounded by papers, screenshots, and printed statements. It felt less like heartbreak and more like preparing a case file for trial. Harper guided every step with the precision she was known for. We labeled evidence, organized timelines, and documented every violation Damien had ever tried to hide. By Monday morning, everything was ready. The sky outside was gray, the kind of muted color that matches the feeling before a storm. Harper opened her laptop and positioned it between us. The email draft filled the screen. It was written in clear professional language, nothing emotional, nothing dramatic. Just facts, dates, transfers, messages, screenshots. A report of misconduct that any HR team would be forced to act on. The subject line was short and sharp. Report regarding code of conduct violation and inappropriate relationship between supervisor and intern. My heart thudded once as I read it, then steadied. Harper placed her hand on my shoulder. "Whenever you are ready." I inhaled slowly. This was not about revenge alone. It was about consequences. About a man who had disrespected his marriage and abused his position at work. About a young woman who thought she could build her life by tearing into someone else's. I moved the cursor to the send button. My finger hovered for a moment, not out of doubt but out of acknowledgement. What I was about to do would change all three of our lives, permanently. Then I clicked. A soft notification appeared at the top of the screen. Sent. No sound, no drama, just a quiet action that carried the weight of everything Damien had taken for granted. I leaned back in the chair and exhaled. For the first time in days, the air felt lighter. The news reached us before noon. A coworker of Damien's, someone who had kept in touch with Harper over the years, sent a brief message. He just got pulled into a meeting with HR. It looks serious. I imagined the scene. Damien walking into the glass-walled conference room, trying to pretend he had nothing to fear. HR folders on the table. Senior managers waiting, arms crossed. A printed copy of the PDF sitting right in front of him. According to the coworker, the meeting lasted less than 20 minutes. They confronted him with the evidence, the transfers, the falsified dinner receipts, the late-night messages, the fact that he had taken an intern to a movie during work hours. There was nothing he could explain away, nothing he could twist into a misunderstanding. It was all there in black and white. When they suspended him, he apparently tried to argue, but his voice cracked. By the time security escorted him to his desk to collect his things, the entire floor had figured out what was happening. Colleagues who once respected him stood silently in the hall, watching him stuff his belongings into a cardboard box. As for Sienna, her meeting happened shortly after. Word was that she tried to blame Damien, then denied everything. Then cried. None of it mattered. Her internship was terminated on the spot. By the end of the day, she had cleared her desk and disappeared from the building, keeping her head down like someone escaping a fire. Harper and I sat on her couch as the updates trickled in. I did not celebrate. I did not smile. I simply listened. Consequences. That was all this was. The first of many. 2 months later, I found myself standing in a different courtroom, this time for the final hearing of our divorce. Damien looked older, thinner, and worn down by the weight of everything he had lost. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes unfocused. When he glanced at me, there was a flicker of hope, quickly smothered by the presence of Harper at my side. The proceedings were straightforward. Harper presented the evidence calmly, without theatrics. The judge reviewed the financial records, the misconduct report, and the documentation of our shared assets. When the time came to negotiate the condo, Damien tried to hold on to it, suggesting he could pay me my share in installments. I refused. Harper spoke for me. Either he paid my half in full or the property would be sold immediately. In the end, he had no choice. The condo was listed below market value to speed the sale. After the mortgage was cleared and the $40,000 owed to my parents was returned, Damien walked away with almost nothing. When the hearing ended, he stood alone in the bright courtyard outside the courthouse, watching me step into a cab. There were no last words, no tears, only silence. I used my portion of the sale to buy a small but peaceful condo on the edge of town. Soft colors, fresh plants, sunlight that warmed the room in the mornings. It felt like the first real home I had chosen for myself. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a notification. A promotion, team-led, a new chapter unfolding, quietly but surely. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Looking back now, I realized that losing Damien was never the end. It was the doorway to becoming a woman who finally chose herself. Freedom does not always arrive gently. Sometimes it walks in after a storm. If my story spoke to you, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And tell me which city you are listening from. Your support helps bring more real-life stories to this channel.